The Comedy of Errors in 3 words, our production certainly. I'm going to go for long overdue.
My name is Philip Breen. I'm the director of Comedy of Errors.
My name's Paddy Cuneen. I'm doing the music on the production.
And I'm Hedy Dalan. I'm playing Adriana.
I'm Avita J and I'm playing Luciana.
I'm Ruth Hall and I'm associate designer.
I'm Max Jones and I am the production set and costume designer.
How does it feel to be the RSC's first production back? Absolutely thrilling. I think maybe people in the world might be bored of watching actors mumble demotic into cameras on Netflix for the last 15 months and to hear some wonderful actors in the outdoors speak some of the great dramatic literature. That makes it sound very serious, actually, but I think will be a wonderful thing anyway. And what's particularly wonderful about this production, this play, of course, is that it's really about a bunch of people meeting at sunset and then suddenly going, oh, because of you, I know that bit about myself, and because of you, I know that bit about myself. And we all sort of come together and feel better and more whole. And that's just in the play, but it also feels incredibly apposite for the moment and for us now.
I just can't wait, to be honest, to be in front of a live audience. Well, it's not the same when you're doing something that's streamed or, you know, looking into a camera lens and not feeling that kind of support that an audience gives you. There's nothing quite like locking eyes with an audience member or hearing their laughter or even just breath. Like you just feel cushioned, and I think we've been deprived of that for too long.
I was just going to say I feel really lucky to be a part of it, really excited. And as you said, it's a play that it kind of interrogates the sense of self, and it's a play about people being reunited, and I feel like it's such a wonderful time to put this particular play on, and I'm really happy to be a part of that.
I think one of the things that this period has kind of hammered home for me is how much I'm just sort of a creature of kind of live performance in general and live theatre, and I think all of the sort of digital content and all of the sort of recorded stuff and all of that just hasn't kind of filled the void of that direct kind of interaction and that sort of direct kind of affirmation of the live event through the audience response, through that kind of shared experience, I think. So, I mean, I think before it's even a question of comedy, I think just generally speaking, having an audience back in to witness and share anything that we've made is going to be kind of amazing, I would sort of say. Once I've remembered how to do my job again, which is what I'm generally concentrating on mostly at the moment, after 18 months not having been in a theatre. So, yeah.
But that's true, what you say, actually, remembering how to do it and remembering that there is an audience, because this has been so conceptual for so long. I mean, we started working on it when, middle of 2019? First meeting?
Yeah, I mean, it's the longest we've sort of ever held a show, isn't it? You know, and there's a lot of doubt kind of creeps in with
There's
that.
a lot of time to doubt. That's absolutely true.
So, you know, you often the pace of turnaround on projects in theatre means that it's a relatively impulsive process.
And you put it on and then file it. You forget about it.
Yeah.
This one
You're
has been
sort of trusting that energy, I think, in that sort of creative process. But this sort of stall, you know, and we can't really separate comedy now from COVID, like as a kind of an event. But the sort of stall in it really has made it hard to, in a way, sort of continue to have faith in decisions we made in 2019. You know,
the world's a very different place.
The world's different. You know, our influences are sort of different. Audience responses will be different. You know, it's going to be quite an interesting process of kind of balancing and tuning back into those sort of dynamics, I think.
Yeah, it feels like we've worked on it for so long ourselves. And
it's only 1,800 lines. It's a tiny play as well. I mean, it's not even like it's King Lear. We've got, you know.
No, exactly. And we've kind of gone, oh yeah, these bits are funny, and like I myself have sort of looked at stuff that I'm doing, gone, oh yeah, that's going to be funny, and that funny bit of text But it's always when you get it in front of an audience that you find out what really is funny, and also the bits that you didn't think were funny at all often get bigger laughs.
That's
You
true,
re-
isn't it?
we rely on previews enormously in comedy to sort of gauge that. I guess what we won't discover until we do it this time round is what the effect of a reduced audience with masks, what that level of disconnect whilst we are live and all in the space, whether that sort of is a barrier to a sort of an open and generous engagement with the piece.
One of the things about doing the play this way outside is that it brings a whole new level of technical challenge to the sound and the music. From my point of view, has been the necessary change in the approach to the technology supporting what we're going to do. So that when we do it outside, the cast are going to be mic'd, and my musicians, who are all singers, will also working principally on microphone. Although we did have that arrangement before, that with the musicians being on mic, that does change the balance of how things will feel. And at the moment that feels very positive, because it gives us, if you like, a little bit more headroom in order to be able to get the sound into, and we're going to be, some of the moments can be bigger than they might have been if you've got an entirely acoustic scene running. You have to try and find the noise floor to fit the music in just above that level of the lights and the hoovers and everything else that goes on that nobody hears except me for some reason. But anyway, there's this terrible low frequency rumbling that goes on, and you've got about 2 decibels that you can get the music into that bit, and the actors are speaking acoustically on top of that. So that's a change, and that's been very interesting. Initially we were going to have more musicians, and there's kind of been a reduction of musical resources. And that's brought about the need to reconsider various cues and rework things and trying to find new ways of. So, for example, if you're writing harmony for 8 voices, you can have a very lush, strong sound. If you've only got 4 voices, then you've got to be slightly more careful with how the voices are arranged. You can't kind of splash tonal clusters in here, there, and everywhere. So, whatever they are, and I've had to go back and reconsider how to do it, and that's been very good. In doing that, I think I've made it almost impossible to sing, and our singers are coming in every day and going, right, we're going to do this, because it's almost impossible, but it's not actually impossible. So whereas I had 4-part harmony chords that 4 singers were doing, now 2 people are doing those chords, but they're doing them in quavers and jumping around the parts. So that some people are singing a bit like a Bach cello suite, where the cello plays the melody and the bass line at the same time. They are now doing both parts.
Designing for an outdoor space, it sort of, obviously presents a load of unique challenges. There's sort of boring things like to consider which don't necessarily relate to like the concept of the show, but things like obviously weather, and like there's a lot of structural kind of implications that need to be considered, wind, rain, heat, all of the effects of those things on sort of the materials of the build, the company on the stage, and how costumes, props, sort of design elements behave in the elements. So there's this whole sort of additional kind of baggage a show will carry that we kind of have to sort of address.
Well, this particular project poses many problems and opportunities. It was originally conceived for inside, and of course one of the things you have when you're inside is lights and the ability to focus action in particular places. And of course when you're on the stage outside, you don't have that. So the work that I've been doing on stage, it's been using the ensemble to focus moments more, almost using the groups of actors a little bit like a lighting design in a way, to sort of to draw the eye to things that we want people to look at individual moments. I think the best thing about it is, in a strange way, it liberates a lot of the play, and actually somehow coming back inside after the time we've had doesn't feel nearly as powerful as an idea of us all being under the same sky and sharing the same air and being able to see each other. And that seems to me a wonderful and remarkable thing that's come about in a way, not by design, but by accident, which will help the play, but also the experience of going, you're there, we're here, and that's going to be great. The shape changes somewhat as well. It feels a bit more amphitheatre and Greek, and that helps us too.
It's like we're going back to the source in a way,
Yeah.
isn't it? Having sort of been away from theatre for a while, kind of going back to
Yeah.
the source of it a bit.
Yeah, I mean that's the great thing about, you know, this is a very sophisticated space. Like, you've got to know a lot about the theatre to understand something about the Royal Shakespeare Theatre, as to why it is like it is. There's a whole history of why this has come to be like it is. If you go to Athens, it takes a particular kind of education to unpack what all the little details of the architecture and the culture of ancient Greece were doing. But a child could tell you a child could point out where the theatre is. It's an empty space with some seating, and that's tremendously exciting.
I'm coming in fresh, so
Indeed.
I haven't been part of the project from the very beginning. So it kind of just feels like a normal rehearsal process for me. So I'm approaching the character as I usually would. Just by kind of seeing what's in the text, what clues are given. I don't know really, just allowing myself to be directed.
I think the journey of creating the characters has been really interesting with costume, because we've had like half a new cast, and some of the old cast, like you, Evita, have like shifted to a different role. And I think it's been really nice, like finding the characters with one cast member and then finding them again kind of, you know, months later with a new cast member. I think that none of us who were involved in the first kind of time want to kind of feel like we're going backwards. So it's really nice to bring the new energy of the new cast and like keep it rolling forwards and keep finding new things. And I think that through the sort of costume fittings, it's been a really nice exploration of the characters and sort of finding new things with new cast members that you might have missed before.
I think you're absolutely right. I think the worst thing that could have happened for us after this break was to sort of coast it back in onto the stage, and actually like the significant recast and the sort of logistical complexities around that and the creative challenges and improvements you have the opportunity to make as well have been a real sort of positive of this sort of second chance. I mean, in terms of character, we've had to sort of reassess most costumes. So it's meant that we've had to sort of start that dialogue again, which has been kind of really good. I mean, and I sort of always enjoy that process anyway. What's been quite interesting is that I've never sort of had to do it twice back to back. So it's kind of a weird test of your initial instinct in a way, because it's like if that idea sort of still carries with a new cast member, then I guess your initial sort of instinct must have been kind of in a pretty good place. And on the whole, everyone has really sort of adopted the kind of existing concept, and what we're really doing is kind of negotiating personal details and, you know, opportunities for sort of individual styling choices or individual kind of action or performance choices that we can then
So it's like fine-tuning, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot of fine-tuning.
And that's that's a lovely like opportunity to have, because quite often it's all so fast.
And last year I wasn't playing this part, but I was understudying the part of Luciana, and so it was kind of always there, and I suppose I had the theory of it, but only really touched on playing it and did, you know, a couple of rehearsals here and there. So I suppose this year it's kind of being open, like you say, and sort of trying to keep things that were useful to discover last year, but also being open to working with Phil on it and having a new cast to be playing with, and using what is useful but also not being fixed, because you want to find it afresh as well and in the new circumstances. So yeah, it's kind of a mixture of like keeping the foundations but also letting new things emerge and grow.
I think the same thing has happened with the set design as well. Like, it's the same as a character in a sense that, you know, it was first designed to be in here and now it's going to be outside in a new theatre. And so it's been on a journey. It has it has the same sort of elements, but now it's sort of taking on a different form.
Yeah.
There have been loads of funny stuff happening. Why can't we think of any of the funny stuff? It's all a bit blue.
When we were doing the table read, Alfred Clay had a sort of from the hotel front desk. So basically every time we thought there was a double, triple, or indeed quadruple entendre, he just sort of hit the bell. Because Because normally in Shakespeare, if you think there is a double entendre there is.
He also rang it on single entendre.
He rang it on single entendres as well.
He was addicted to that.
Yeah, so the bell was a constant companion, and now the ding, when anyone says anything that has a remote sexual fraughtage, it is rung with alacrity. Anything to do with hunting, riding equipment, saddles, stirrups, etc. Alfred Clay really was banging that bell.
Antipholus's naked sword ding.
Oh yes, they come with naked swords. They come with naked swords. Ding, 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 said Alfred Clay.
That's going to be edited straight out, isn't it? That's right on the floor there. You get that out.
I think one of the reasons I think we've gone to this period of the 80s is so many of the films of that period. Roger Rabbit is sort of late 80s, early 90s, I think, anyway. But no matter, the comedy is so accessible yet so profound, and it's a lot of the ways in which people talk about Toy Story now. It's a film about loss and an era passing by, and it has all of the stuff that Singing in the Rain has, but it's also incredibly funny. Or films like Back to the Future, which changes every single time you watch it. But I suppose for me, they're profound and brilliant works of art that don't declare themselves as works of art and don't kind of say, oh, actually, mate, you've got to have a posh accent and an education and I've read a ton of books to really understand this. And that's the thing that drives me potty about Shakespeare, when it is sort of claimed by folk who have, use it as a sort of stick with which to beat other people, and actually you don't need a brain to understand Shakespeare, you just need a soul. You just have to have lived, you just have to understand what's coming through it. There's nothing intrinsically beautiful in the arrangement of the words. It's about the observation of what's coming through Shakespeare, and if you've lived, you'll connect to it. Simple and straightforward as that.
Like in terms of inspiration, I mean, we've sort of pulled from an enormous amount of sources actually for this project. It's kind of like there was never one kind of key source of inspiration. We were sort of always interested, there's a technical exercise around delivering the story for design, certainly with Shakespeare, but there was also kind of we were trying to find or capture a feeling of sort of uneasiness and of the sense of misidentity and sort of confusion, and sort of an underlying kind of confusion maybe. So we were looking, I think, we looked at op art a bit early on, didn't we? And that sort of had quite a strong influence on the floor design and how we've kind of played with colour. We went to saw Bridget Riley show, yeah. So we've touched upon that as a sort of genre, and we've sort of taken advantage of kind of what the 80s can offer in terms of vamp and clarity of sort of silhouette and character, and also what's quite useful, just going back to a point that Phil made earlier about the Garden Theatre, is obviously the absence of opportunities for lighting. Choices to push colour and shape with costume are really important then, because you are sort of drawing focus with bodies, and with costume, and I think that can be really helpful kind of in sort of setting a scene and guiding an audience's kind of sightline in what is a sort of now a big open and slightly unwieldy space, in broad daylight.
What have I enjoyed about the process so far? Being in a room with creative people again, singing in harmony with other human beings has been so lovely. I'm really excited about the period. It's set in the 80s. I've got a fantastic hairdo on the horizon. and yeah, just playing, just the joy of discovering what happens when somebody else is doing their thing and you're responding to it, and that magic that happens when two people are just playing together.
I think I've enjoyed most watching the company enjoy each other's work, and one of the things that we've been trying to do as well, the thing as a director I've said to myself I wanted to focus on, was to try and really focus on our spoken verse skills. That sounds quite sort of academic, but all I really mean is for us to really to train properly with each other, and we've been doing sonnets twice a week for an hour, just to really kind of hone those skills, to really hone fine levels of detail and meaning, muscularity in the voice, and all those things that are going to help us hit the back wall of the Barbican and communicate this play in the open air. So I suppose a highlight was perhaps probably yesterday, having my mind blown by having William Grint, who is plays a second merchant whose first language is British Sign Language, do Sonnet 18. And I think I probably learned more about Shakespeare in 45 minutes watching him do that than I had in the previous few years almost.
One of the highlights, I suppose, of doing this process is we're kind of working under some constraints here about social distancing, and everyone's wearing masks, and there's this sense of a resumption of play, but without the real kind of contact or kind of interpersonal connections that we. So one of the things I wanted to do was make sure that our musicians felt that they belonged within the company, and similarly that the company felt that the musicians were part of them. So in order to do that, I came up with a brilliant plan of we'll all sing together. So we all sang, and everyone, normally you could put people together and they would sound strong, but we were very spread out through the thing, and it was touch and go. I couldn't work out whether we should do some Bach in 4-part harmony, but I think I made the right choice, because we did Video Killed the Radio stuff, Buggles instead, in 4-part harmony. And the singers were able to just kind of give a bit of a lead, but the rest of the company joined in with real kind of joy and gusto. And that was a really nice moment where everyone was kind of accepting everybody else, and like theatre, a communal activity and a shared imagination producing something. So it was that was a high point for me.
I think my favourite moment so far working on this part of this production was in the costume fitting with Anthony Bunsey, working on his costume for Aegean. And we'd picked a few things out, and there was stuff on the rail, and he sort of had a little look, had a rummage through, picked out some things that sort of spoke to him, and then put it on. We sort of added a few bits, and it was just like watching him like find his character. Like he put on the clothes and then something magic happened, and that was a great moment.
I hope that with the audience coming to see this production after a period of being locked down, that they really kind of value some of the simpler things in the experience of seeing theatre. I'm never really impressed by massive video installations or enormous sound or any of those things. I always just want to see one person on stage kind of spilling their guts or being broken, or and that simplicity. I hope that this experience, this is speaking very personally, I hope there's a kind of reset, and we go back to some of the drives which are present in one of the things I love is no theatre, which is Japanese, and it's a very, very simple aesthetic, and from that simplicity you invite the audience to imagine and understand and participate in something without too much Hollywood infrastructure engineering your emotional response left, right and centre. And I really hope that the appetite for resuming going to the theatre will also make people feel that the essential is not the glitz, but the essential is the kind of simplicity of communication between people. Watching audiences, I love watching audiences, because I've always done the Sound and Music, so I'm at the back somewhere, and I just like watching how the audience take it. And I want to watch the audience on this, and I want to see them kind of feel that it's really important and care about somebody on stage, because they're doing something that people can relate to.
And it's a very rare thing now, increasingly in our culture, where 500 people get together in a room and implicitly meditate on whether something is true or not. When you kind of leave the theatre and you ask your mate, what did you think? Yeah, that was good, or that bit was good, or whatever. We're meditating on whether something collectively is true. And we very rarely get an opportunity. We get so few opportunities to do that, increasingly so. So I hope with the theatre, it being a poetic space, I don't know, you could be standing in a Harry Styles concert, for example, and the music's really loud and everyone's going, watermelon sugar high, and maybe I'm standing in the middle of it going, I think I'm getting love wrong, because it doesn't feel like a watermelon sugar high for me. And then, but maybe one of the great things about the theatre is that it presents human faults, And so we feel a bit less alone in the world. And so maybe we can kind of share the idea that maybe we're not all having a watermelon sugar high when it comes to love. And we can all sort of slightly forgive each other and be a bit nicer to each other. And maybe we might then laugh together and then feel our vulnerability and our weakness. And then we might be less Old Testament judgmental, as everyone appears to be on Twitter, and utterly unforgiving of any minor human indiscretion. So I really just hope to save the world through theatre.
I hope at least that we earn the audience's love with this play. I think I get the feeling that everyone involved is putting so much love and energy into it. I think they're going to leave buzzing and smiling. That's my hope. We shall see.
Fingers crossed.